Alexia, dale.
Hola, hola, muy buenas tardes a todos. Mi nombre es Alexia, estoy aquí con mi compañera Lía y vamos a ser sus intérpretes entre el español y el inglés.
Hello, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Alexia, and I'm here with my partner Leah, and we will be your interpreters between Spanish and English today.
Trabajamos con un marco que se llama justicia del lenguaje, que es el derecho que todas las personas tenemos de comunicarnos, entender y ser entendidas en nuestros idiomas.
We work with a framework of language justice, which is the right that all people have to communicate, understand, and be understood in our languages.
También incluye el respeto a los derechos lingüísticos de todas las personas y de todos los pueblos.
It also includes a respect for the linguistic rights of all peoples.
Por lo que queremos empezar honrando a todos los idiomas que están presentes en este espacio, más allá del inglés y el español. Por ejemplo, nosotros nos encontramos en Los Ángeles, que es territorio Tongva no cedido.
So we'd like to begin by honoring all of the languages that are present here today, ones above and beyond Spanish and English. For example, we are in Los Angeles, which is unceded Tongva territory.
Entonces, para facilitar la conversación interlingüística, vamos a estar usando la herramienta de interpretación de Zoom. Para las personas que están aquí en Zoom, les explicaremos cómo poder acceder a su canal de idioma.
And to facilitate a cross-linguistic conversation, we will be using Zoom's interpreting feature, and we will explain for those who would like to use it in just a moment how to do that.
Si están en una computadora, le van a dar clic al globito que va a aparecer en la parte inferior de su pantalla y después pueden seleccionar su canal, ya sea el inglés o el español.
If you are joining us on a computer, you will click on a globe that will appear at the bottom of the Zoom screen, and you will select your language channel from there.
Si están en un teléfono o en una tableta, el botón se va a ver diferente, va a tener 3 puntos, dice más o more, le dan clic ahí, después a la interpretación de idiomas y después a su canal de idioma preferido.
If you are joining us on a smartphone or a tablet, the button will look different. It will be a little box that says more or más, and you will click there for another menu where you will click on language interpretation, and from there you will choose your preferred language channel.
Y de nuevo, si no se sienten cómodas en los dos idiomas, sí les pedimos que por favor seleccionen un canal y se queden ahí por la duración de la charla el día de hoy.
And again, we ask that if you are not totally comfortable with both languages, that you pick one channel and stay there for the duration of the event.
Eso es todo por nuestra parte. Como siempre, estamos súper contentas de estar aquí apoyando los esfuerzos multilingües que está haciendo LACE, ya que sentimos una tremenda solidaridad con la labor que hacen en Los Ángeles y más allá.
That's it for our part. And as always, we are very happy to be here supporting the efforts of LACE to build multilingual spaces. And we feel very much in solidarity with the work that you are doing. Thank you.
Adán, Claudia y Claudia, ya está activado la función de interpretación. Por favor, métanse al canal de español.
You can choose now the channel interpreted.
No, we haven't been assigned, Juan.
Good. Okay. Bienvenidos a todos. Nos estamos conectando desde LACE, Los Ángeles Contemporary Exhibitions, y estamos en territorio Tongva, como lo mencionaron nuestras intérpretes, y honramos la lucha del pueblo Tongva que es presente, que está en este presente, que fue del pasado y que sigue para un futuro. Y bueno, ya nada más voy a dar paso a Claudia Pretelin, que es investigadora asociada de Intergalactix y ha sido alguien que me acompañó desde el principio de esta investigación tuvimos la oportunidad de ir a El Salvador
Maybe
juntas.
to go to El Salvador together and to meet Adán. And today we are also very happy to have Claudia Sevilla, another voice from Honduras. And Intergalactix also welcomes this project, Triángulo Nother, which has grown as a satellite project. And I will now pass the mic to Claudia Pretelin, and welcome to everybody.
No te escuchamos.
There you go. Hola, muchas gracias por acompañarnos.
Hi, hello everyone. Thank you for joining us in our last conversation of Triángulo Nother. This is a program organized by the Honduran artist and curator Adán Vallecillo, as Daniela said, and as part of the activities for the exhibition Intergalactix Against Isolation. My name is Claudia Pretelin. I have a doctorate in art history from the National Autonomous University of Mexico. I am an advisor and researcher associated with the exhibition Intergalactix Against Isolation at the invitation of the chief curator and director of programming at LACE, Daniela Lieja Quintanar. A little bit to explain what Intergalactix is, as Daniela mentioned previously, it's an exhibition and it's a diasporic exhibition and an investigation that brings together works of art that examine the violence that is produced from physical and conceptual borders, as well as the severe immigration policies promoted by the US. This exhibition focuses both on the southern border between Mexico and Central America, as well as the northern border between Mexico and the US. And the term intergalactics, Daniela took it from, she was inspired by the Encuentros, the Zapatista gatherings of 1996, which was a forum for defense of humanity that invited the participation of any life inside or outside our galaxy. In that sense, Intergalactix is presented as a solidarity network between regions, groups, and individuals. And as Daniela also mentioned, as part of this research, we traveled to El Salvador in 2020, where we met Adán, and we shared the experience to think from Central America. Adán, again, thank you so much for organizing these meetings and for creating these collective maps in the context of the exhibition. For those of you who are not familiar with Adán's work, he is a visual artist and independent curator. He did his studies in sociology and art in Tegucigalpa and San Juan, Puerto Rico. And with his practice, he seeks to create platforms for production and exchange that are open, self-sufficient, and responsible towards the communities and ecosystems where they are developed. It has as a priority the stimulation of collaboration, conceptualization, and sites of proposals that engage culture producers in the Central American region. He has coordinated various exhibitions, workshops, and public art projects. And he was also the one who introduced us to the work of Claudia Sevilla for her talk. Claudia is a photographer born in Tegucigalpa, Honduras, and developed her career in Argentina in the Escuela de Fotografía Creativa Andy Goldstein and at the University of Buenos Aires. She has participated in different exhibitions, including the collective exhibition Golpe 10, which was done in 2019, and the 10th biennial, the Central American 10th biennial in 2016. Among many things, she's the founder and organizer of the collective Mitch, which is an artistic project, artistic history and scientific project. And she gives workshops in the organization of women in art and at the Center for Art and Culture at the University in Honduras. This talk, which is titled Documented Migration. Claudia is going to talk to us from the perspective of photography and sociology. At the end of the presentation, Adán and I will have some short speeches with questions and commentaries, and we will open the forum so that for those of you who are joining us can also join the conversation. Before giving the mic to Adán and Claudia, I'd like to thank the team of LACE. We would like to thank the artists, organizations, and all of the people who have contributed to this exhibition and its various manifestations of programming. And we'd like to remind people who are in Los Angeles that there are still some days left to visit the exhibition, which closes August 14th. And we'd also like to mention that the Intergalactix Station will remain open for whoever would like to learn more about the research processes that supported and gave birth to this exhibition. Thank you, Claudia. As they were saying, Triángulo Norte is a type of, we would say it's like a type of intergalactic satellites, a satellite in Central America, which is part of this big project, this very extensive research that you have done and that you have invited us to be part of. And in some way, we have wanted to cover everything. It's impossible to cover everything, but some of the reference marks that we see in migration, the phenomena of migration, and that's one of the reasons that we decided to invite Claudia Sevilla so that she could comment on and talk to us from her perspective as a photographer on this series of images that have turned the world on its head about the migration, the recent immigration to United States, and the recent phenomenon of the caravans. Before letting Claudia speak, I'd like to really thank your interest and participation from the beginning. Truly, it's a great honor to have Claudia in this presentation. And I would like, Claudia, I would like for you to talk to us before we look through the images. I'd like to ask you, what were the criteria for the selection that you put into practice to choose, these images? Welcome, Claudia Sevilla. Hello. Thank you so much for the invitation. Thank you, Claudia, the other Claudia, Daniela, Jocelyn, the whole team at LACE, and Adán Vallecillo for taking me into consideration for participating in this project. In reference to what Adán was explaining, what was the criteria for this project, I really thought it was important to be able to speak about the images of the migrants from a Central American perspective. So the selection for the images, it was from different points. First, I selected images that were the ones that were everywhere in the press, in the media. And so there are a few images that you'll see from there. And I also wanted to look for images that were not the ones that were the most common or that weren't the most popular in the media. And from these images, what I do and what I am always saving images from this topic and from many topics. So I have folders that I've been saving images that are interesting to me, to be able to analyze them, to read them. For me, the photographic analysis is something very important that we are always developing photography. It's like a language. if we are learning French or German or Spanish or English, it's the same. I consider it the same with photography. So I tend to do that to save images, like I'm like a collectioner. Uh, I collect images, and before this project, I had many images already there. So I had all of that saved, and from all of that, I made a selection of images and I tried to make a balance between the ones that were the most popular in the media and visions of other photographers that perhaps they're not so known, but I wanted to look for Mexican photographers. There's a Salvadorian photographer. So from this side of the border. So that was basically my criteria for selection. So you can see the presentation there now. We can begin with the first one. I put this photo for the first one. It's also something a little bit personal. When I saw this image, what was it was the most popular media moment of the caravans that were going from Honduras and went through Guatemala. And when I saw this image, for me, it was too much. I think that this image, I put it as the first one because it really captured a lot about what immigration is, from the social aspect, the human aspect, the in the aspect that there are so many fathers and mothers who are bringing their children to seek a better situation, and the unbelievability of it all, to see this little girl sleeping on her father, and the wind really I it felt to me like a dream, like what's going to happen and what is that dream. And when I saw that image, I put it in my collection of images that I have, and it's an image. I don't know. I kept going back to this image during the time of the caravans. For me, when the caravans began to come out in a massive participation, I, it really took me, it took a lot for me to be looking at it in the media. I didn't like to see a lot of what was happening. And this was an image that that seemed to create a bit like an order of chaos of everything that was happening, a time that was like a bombardment of images and videos and social media. So for me, from that saturation, when you're from the country where the caravans are leaving from, and it's not just like, oh, this group of immigrants are, going from one country to another. It happened here. It could be my neighbor or a family member, someone who was in that caravan. So that emotional burden was something that was important to be able to analyze this photo. So for me, this was a starting point. The photographer is a Brazilian, Ucelei Marcelino, and we can see in the photograph a father and his daughter, and they're from Guatemala, and they are going to cross the northern border. I'm not sure, Adán, if we're going to do the commentary at the same time or if we're going to wait till the end. I would love to do it now. I think it would be more dynamic if we do the comments now. Yes, Claudia, the last thing that you were talking about, that has to do with one of the questions that we wanted to cover here. And it has to do with the the look from that side of the border and from this side of the border. And I would like to know the opinion of Claudia Pretelin because she's from Mexico, but she's living in Mexico, in the US. And it's important to know what is the perception that there is of the images of the caravans from the Mexican side and also from the US side. Because as you said very well, from this side, because of the immediate closeness and emotional closeness, many times it's a family member, they're images that evoke other feelings. In this time, at this moment, Honduras is a country that is very militarized. There's a lot of repression in general against the rights defenders and against the population in general. There's a lot of fear, there's a lot of uncertainty. The unemployment is very great, and it's one of the biggest reasons to go out in these caravans. And of course, these images touch us in a direct way when we are conscious of the fact that the majority of the people who migrate en masse are coming from our own countries. So, Claudia Pretelin, if you could comment to us a little bit about what is the perspective from the other side.
De hecho, hoy estaba leyendo
Actually, today I was reading a report that was done at University of Michigan in May 2021 about the media perception that these images have had in the US, particularly when we understand this as, are you for or against migration? So in this study, for example, there were some topics, like about a threat. For example, this image would be something that they are describing as person positivity, which is the person, the individual, right? You have a certain level of empathy, as you were mentioning, but when we have other images, such as the ones we will see that are sharing, yes, there is something that we call fatigue, that it is a very, specifically when the perspective of the border is covered, particularly from the US, right? So these images, what you are mentioning, Clau, that have been used through the media and that they exist as political agendas that are feeding the polarization of political parties that are here in the US, and there has been a very aggressive retort against immigrants. These images are some sort of justification the eyes of these political agendas, the Democratic and Republican parties. So we also, and we will see this with the images coming up, for example, like demonizing immigrants, seeing them as a threat, and most recently treating them as the virus, right? That now it is a narrative that the US is working with, that, saying that all these immigrants that are coming, they don't have the vaccines and they're the cause of this COVID surge in the US. And also, this is part of that narrative. So there are several parts that are being showcased through the media, like, being born from the political parties, depending on the political agenda that you have. and that are affecting the public perception of what migration is from the outside. And maybe it would be interesting to talk about the photojournalism images that are taking pictures of what happens when immigrants manage to cross the border, right? Because all of these images that we will see are creating a register of the arrival and the trajectory. But how do you register the very few who managed to cross the border? How are we creating that register within the US? There is something that's very interesting, Claudia, that it is the mission of how does it look like from the US. So I think that the perspective of the US is a perspective, as you are saying, a political. And it's being used in multiple ways. And I think we also have an emotional perspective on our end, and then also a lot of empathy with the immigrant, because we see them in these situations that, you know, we have all gone through that. We all have a family member who has gone through that. So that is the first thing that I wanted to say. I also want to clarify in this presentation, you will see that the images are like this one. These are cropped. Some of them have the titles. It is not that the presentation is poorly done. I did that on purpose because I also wanted to show images that are the ones that we find on Instagram and newspapers. So a lot of them have that legend, but these are images that are public. They're not just images of a photographer that did a separate project, but it is a public image. And I think we can continue with the next one. Well, I guess one, and we have a couple more. So this image is a construction. It is a work of the photographer Ugur Galenkus from Turkey. And he has a series of photographs throughout his life, and he has worked through this series that's called Universos Paralelos, Parallel Universes. And truly, he was working with portraits and animals. So then he makes this publication on his Instagram, and this picture is actually not that easy to find for public, and he posted it there, and I think that is something that he did at the moment. It is something that was done very quickly. I think he just came up with the idea in the moment, and that was, and this is when the Capitol invasion happened, and this is compared to an image of immigrants. So this superposition is a tool that it is commonly used. Nonetheless, I think that the timing in which Ugur Galen does this was the ideal time, right? Because it's an image that is shocking and makes us question all these things, and it makes us think about the political, what is allowed, what's not allowed, what it is punishable, what is not, who is allowed to cross a border and to climb a wall, right? And there are a lot of topics there. I don't know. Yes, I think that these images, they make us think a lot about So with that excuse, there's always going to be a perfect excuse to connect a forced migration to, you know, connecting it to the bad or like the ghost. So in this case, coronavirus. So the caravan migration, it is an equivalent of transmitting the virus, which represents a threat. And speaking about political agendas, it makes us think of all those news coming from Mexico, and we will see other images that Claudia Sevilla is going to show, in which that idea of the wall is also relative, because a lot of people think that Trump failed in his project of building that wall, but many more effective walls were born, the policing walls, and these are all they signed a treaty with Trump about safe countries. So the status of safe countries for these three countries to stop the migration coming from South America, because they're not only passing through the South American isthmus, but also Haitian people and Cuban people, and of course the wall extended to our territories. That idea of the wall mutated in a very perverse way to our territories in one side, and then the other one we were talking about a rejection. Is very hard not to think about, at least to me, that concept of philosophy de la cortina, but phobia, which is the rejection of poor people, and how behind this rejection to immigrants, truly what it is behind is not necessarily xenophobia, that yes, it is there, but also photophobia, that these immigrants came with money, like a lot of immigrants from Latin American countries and obviously that the conditions and the rights are changing. So that concept is aporophobia, and the poorphobia, rejecting poor people, that is a concept that really helps me understand this rejection, that it is a consequence of forced migration, and not only here in Honduras. And the Mexican government, who pretends to be the most humanist, that is also working in these policing walls.
Justo hace algunos días, creo que fue como
I think that a couple of days ago was August 5th. One of the Republican politicians, I don't know if I am saying his name correctly, but they were saying in the news that immigrants do not know anything about laws. So it is this right, that it is being defined also the theory of replacement, a theory that believes that white people or Anglo people is being replaced by the foreigners, and that it is connected to this image that you are showing us, Claudia, that it is the rejection of Trump, who was one of the main promoters of these ideas, right? So yes, I mean, now I have and I think folks can click on it. I don't know how you download it. For example, we have seen that once, at least in the news, and we have never seen that how you speak about migration. And also, it's worth mentioning that this media polarizing exists.
No es lo mismo como las trata Fox, ¿no? Entonces estas imágenes.
And the way Fox treats this, it is not the same thing. So these images that have been a product of immigration, they also migrate themselves, right? And to promote these ideas depending on the context where they're at. So I just wanted to say something else before we talk about this image. So this that you were talking about, the fear, right? How do we use that fear? Of the immigrant that crosses. So, and then there's another fear, because if you turn the radio on, you listen to all these commercials that are paid by the US Embassy, where they are creating this kind of story where they're, oh, I want to leave with my children to the US. And the way that you see it, well, I think that this also is connected to
And I'm going to say it again from one of the first things that they said was, don't come. And we hear that all the time, every day in the radio. Don't come, don't come. And not for any real thing, but because and not because it's dangerous, not because you're going to get infected with COVID, but the situation in Honduras, we already live in a constant situation of fear. So much climate change, so much insecurity. So it's also to try to understand how is the psyche of the people in the north. We feel a little bit abused because we always are with this fear. So this photo is from Adán Vallecillo, who is a US photographer. And there are more pictures of the wall, but and I selected several because I feel like the wall is the most graphic thing that we're going to see. Like it's that hard place there. There are other types of walls, as they mentioned, there's other types of walls that were constructed that were not physical, that maybe are more successful. But this physical wall really says, don't come, don't enter through here, don't even try. So this image really, I really think it's important because it's someone who's there, and it's designed for nobody to be able to pass through each of these metal bars. And then there's that whole mesh behind it. But this person is saying, I'm going to try even though I can't, even though they don't let me. And I think this image for me really captures a lot of frustration of not being able to get through, not being able to belong somewhere, not being able to realize the dreams that you have for your everyday life. These are the thoughts that come to me when I see this image. We can go on now with the next one. So then we're going to come to these images that I think are the ones that are the most famous, the ones that were most displayed in the media. So many news organizations put these ones out. And I think that it's this image to look at it, it's very impactful. And every day we were, seeing it, and from so much seeing it, you come to a point where it's like it doesn't leave that much of an impression since you've seen it so many times. But if we return to the image, if we look, you have the bottom right corner, and it goes all the way to the back, all of those people. That bridge is completely full of people, and with flags, almost like shield of arms. It's like, here you're coming with us. Don't be afraid. We belong to somewhere, and we are, even though we are moving. This is from a Mexican photographer, Guillermo Arias. He has extremely great work on immigration. It's very extensive, his work. Anyone, if you are looking for any photographs for the migrant caravans, the first ones that come out are from him. He has a very complete work. It's a very human work. And he has all of these aspects of how massive it is, right? It's so really leaves an impression. And so then we can go to the other image, which is also from Guillermo. And here's another contrast. It's massive, but it's also like someone gave us a telescope and said, okay, yes, this is a huge amount of people, but these are individuals. It's not just a mass. Each person here is an individual. So it's like someone said, okay, let's look at it from close up. It's an image from the same photographer. I really admire his work because he has that type of things. You can see the big picture and he goes to the tiny details and he plays with that. And here we can appreciate everything, how each person is a world. We could spend an hour looking at this image to see each person, how each person is dressed, what are they bringing, their children, their mothers. And the image that was more used was the one from before. It was the one that was the most used in the media. This type of images, this type were not so popular in the image. It's more human. And everything that happened in this huge amount of people, here's this. And we can see how many lives are here. For me, it was important to share this type of images that play between what's the masses and the individual, because both things are important. The fact that there's so many people are coming is significant, but the fact that they are individuals is not something we can forget. They're individuals, they're people, and we cannot forget that part. I don't know if you'd like to say something about this image. Yes, Claudia, I think something that's also important to indicate is the error that the US continues to do, which is to support corrupt and repressive governments in Central America. And the statements that the Senator Ocasio-Cortez made in reaction to Kamala Harris, that we cannot burn somebody's house and then blame them for leaving. And so many people are fleeing from that insecurity and that repression and that uncertainty that we are living in these countries. Yes. Thinking a little bit from that side, but also from the side of Mexico. Remember that someone was telling me the immigrants are coming. They're going to come through here too. And there was that fear was also here in Mexico, and not just because people know that not everyone is going to be able to cross. And so what's going to happen to them? Where are they going to stay? So I also remember here in Mexico that the use of these images. And in the US, it was to say, oh, they are coming to flood our country. They are coming in enormous groups. And that idea of economic inflection, that how is it going to affect our economy? How is it going to affect the idea of what is stable, of our stability? Yes, definitely. This is like really the deepest part of this topic, because it's something very historical. It's not something just now. It's a result of a consequence from consequence to consequence, some things that have been adding up. And here's the result. It's very clear. But for me, it's very difficult because sometimes when one starts to think about the whole historic burden that there is, it's overwhelming. And sometimes between all of that, we also forget that there is a present moment. There's a present moment with a lot of causes. And that if we started to think about the in historic terms, it's very difficult to see what is the way out of all this, because so I don't know, this is something that I thought that I throw out to the air, because actually when I start to think about this, everything actually becomes abstract to me. It's very difficult. So I try to come back to the present. I say, okay, here we are, but all those historic reasons, it's very frustrating and very overwhelming. I have a question for both. What was your main what was the main media coverage you looked at? Was it Instagram? Because the media has also changed. It's not always now the newspaper. For you two, how was it to see it from that perspective? Well, for me, mainly, I was looking at a lot of the social media networks, because so many migrants on the way, they were taking photographs and they were uploading them, and there were WhatsApp chains, and these images were coming to us. People would put them up on Facebook, and personally, I also consumed a lot of this media through television, because there's a media company in Honduras, which is called Medio Progreso. And so the caravans, they sent reporters to Mexico with the caravan. It's very rare that they would send someone to accompany the migrants through the whole trip. So I was like, oh, what are they? Wow, they're putting someone in another country. It was the first time that I saw something like that. And here in the streets, there were, you can see on the front pages, you could see here in the kiosks where they were selling the newspapers. And so every time, when I would leave in my car, you could pass by and you would see these front pages in the kiosks. But for me, principally, it was in WhatsApp and in the social media networks. Yes, for me too. I think that they've become the main mechanisms for the dispersion of these images, and one of the most respected media companies here in the country always tries to bring to light what other media companies are not doing. And we see the contrast as well, that they within this topic of immigration, they start to create characters. And there was a character they created called Lady Frijoles, Lady Beans. And it was the perception of many people in Mexico, which is that yes, many of the migrants are coming, they're leaving the virus, they're leaving dirt, it's a chaos. And so the official media companies in Honduras talked about it in a very pejorative way, and talking about it as if they were not subjects that have rights. Sometimes they were called collateral lives. And in the case of this, character, she said that she was tired of eating beans in Honduras, and so she went to Mexico and didn't want to eat beans. So they created these characters on that pejorative way of the human desires that the people had. Yes, and they with that situation, that woman said one thing and they took her words and they created it into this whole other thing. And I think that, just because they're migrants, they need to conform themselves to having less. They're human beings and they have traveled kilometers and kilometers to search for a better way of life. Claudio Sevilla, I wanted to ask you, beyond the perspective, looking at these photographs and the photojournalism aspect, what are these images telling us, or how do these images change from one side to the other, which we've talked about it a little bit from the perspective of the photojournalism. What's the reaction of the photo journalism? And this has to do a little bit with what we've already been talking, the filters from the media, but from the photojournalists, what do you think that these images seek to transmit that you have selected?
I think that, first of all, we should know that a lot of these photographers are also working for a press agency so they can sell those photographs to the media after and all over the world. So there are filters there that I imagine, yes, they are reporting, but at the same time, they are working. They have to sell those images. So that kind of photo media journalism, they know which images resonate more with people and which ones doesn't. And I think that it is also related to the mass media and also this topic of compassion and empathy. And I think they're also seeking how to say, well, there's children, there's a lot of women, there were a lot of women. So I think that it has to do with that.
La foto anterior también del brasileño Wesley.
And also Wesley Marcelino, this is an example of and then the next one from Luis Antonio Rojas, who's a Mexican photographer, very young. And he has worked a lot around this topic of migration and the border. And this image, I believe, is, well, what I was saying, how the flag brings some sort of a protection, and also the possibility of this, their image, they're sitting down in the middle of the highway that they are traveling through, and they're just there. I do not know the story of this photograph. It did not have a description, but anything could have been happening. So maybe somebody giving directions or like, hey, let's just all take a moment. It is time to rest. And then we do that as a group. And I love this image because sometimes they compare it with images of immigrants running or breaking things. And this image, it is the complete opposite. Is, there is some peace in this image. And this one, well, I think that this is the most published in the media. Well, John Moore from the US, he won a Pulitzer Prize. And this picture, you can just have a conversation about this because there's so many layers. So we will cover a couple, which is first, how these images were used. This little kid, their mom is from Honduras, and this was used to criticize the family separations that started to happen when they started to separate their children from their families. That it hadn't happened ever before, but it still does, because there is a very high number of children that have died well in these places, in these cases. So we have this image, and Time uses it to is it like this. So it was this very intense argument that when they started to get to the US, so we saw this journey, and then we get here, and then what happens? So something that I wanted to say, I don't want to spend too much time, but like when you use this image on the internet, you find a lot of criticism saying that this little girl and the mom were not separated, and that's why the image turned into this. They were actually registering the mom, and these two were particularly not separated, but the image was used to represent family separations. So here we can talk about what are the specific readings that one can have about one image and how those images are used. And I think that it is that where we have to sit down and think. It doesn't matter if they were not separated, like regardless. This is a very young little girl with their mom in the border dealing with this very complex situation, and regardless, there were many kids that were indeed separated. So this we will see a lot repeatedly, that they take an image and then it's used as an excuse, right? Maybe the image wasn't used in the best way, but it does happen. And then we can move on to the next one. And well, this is when we talk about them getting to the border, what happens. This is from Kim Kyung-hun from South Korea. I think this was also one of the most visible. And Claudia, I think that you knew more of the story behind this image, and I think you talked about it.
Sí, bueno, un poco platicábamos de
Yes, well, we talked about,
algo que he estado analizando también con otros fotógrafos.
and it is something that I also talked about with other photographers that were there to cover that moment that
Retratado y también como muy
has been captured, and
de cuando les sueltan el gas, ¿no? En la frontera.
the moment when they
Sí, como un poco platicábamos esta creo que no
the
la
border, and I
alcanzo a
think
ver,
that
no la alcanzo a ver ahorita,
I
pero
can't really see
el
that well, but
niño sí
she
le
has three children, and one of them is not photographed,
contaba
captured in that
cómo
image.
fue
And
su
was
experiencia
that how
en la frontera.
was their experience in the border?
Sí, podemos seguir a la otra imagen.
Can we go to the next one?
Y yo creo que luego están este otro tipo de imágenes, ¿no? Que son como
And this is this
más
other kind of image that they're more human. You know, let us not forget that they are people. Those moments of being tired, where families are sleeping, eating on the highway or in shelters where they were
y creo que esto también es esa otra cara.
allowed to stay. And I think that it is the other face.
Si vamos de vuelta al tema del miedo,
Because if we talk about fear, then what is the fear when we see
hay de todo tipo de personas en ese
that there are all sorts of people in those caravans? And I'm not saying that everybody's a good person,
mundo, porque es así, pero
because it is the world, but that doesn't mean
conmovedoras, muchas
that
son
there aren't very touching stories, and a lot of them are just families with little children.
y luego tengo dos imágenes de este
And now I have two images from this Canadian photographer, Brett Gundlach,
ahí se fue ya como
and he,
un poco más
well, let's say this is something that's more worked. It is not as photojournalism,
es una son imágenes este y la
but these are images, this one and the following one. If we can take a look at the other one,
se va como por un retrato
in which
donde se tiene un fondo blanco
where, you know, he brought this white background. I think what he's trying to do is
cantidad de gente y hey, veamos
showing, you know, let's see this little sliver of a moment of this capsule of what
una serie de fotografías en las que sacaban
people are. So he did a series of photographs in which he took portraits of the immigrants and then he spoke about them, like this one.
de hecho fue publicado si no me
And this was published, if I'm not mistaken, at a Mother Jones.
varias así, ¿no?
And there are several ones like this, right?
dicen me querían matar en Honduras.
People saying they wanted to kill me in Honduras, the gangs. They told me that if I did not join them, they would kill me. And this is Minority Segment and the Suazo. So this is an offshoot common history. Very young people run away because of the issue of the gangs. And I think it's interesting because it is another way of looking at the immigrant. And these pictures are also taken, you know, this is during the journey. And I think this is an incredible of just publishing stories of several people. Next image. And well, what we talked about, what happens when you arrive, and this is what happens, right? Going back to fear, and fear is I am put in a detention center. I am separated from my family. People don't know anything about me. I am mistreated. There's so many stories about this. So now we just need to look up and realize that what happens in those places is very, very heavy. And this image, the reason why I selected it is because it's like an aerial image, and just seeing how they're, we can see that the toilets are like porta potties. These are not conditions to live, and also everything falls into like what's gonna happen after this. And well, this picture of a Mike Blake and Griselda San Martin. She is an African American photographer. She's one of my favorites. I've been following her for some years now. And I was surprised to see that Isla San Martin has some photographs that she made in the US of families that of Garifuna families, and which is an ethnic group that lives in Honduras. They live particularly in the coast of Honduras, and it is a very short series of this Garifuna family, if I am not mistaken, in the city of New York. And this I included just to say, well, there are also histories of families that managed to get here, and then what happens when these are families that are there and they build a life. This is another one from Luis Antonio Rojas. I included this because we keep looking at this flag theme. A lot of the people in the caravans are from Honduras, although they were people from all of the nationalities and only from Central America. And for me, it's something that's very interesting because they're saying this, we're running away, but we're running away from our country, but everywhere we bring a flag. I'm sorry to interrupt you because exactly I wanted to say this. Well, what are they telling us? What are these images telling us about the sense of belonging, and specifically the sense of a nation? So, for example, people that are running away from the violence and the horror and frustration, and even then, they carry these flags from their own countries. And they're constantly saying, we are from Honduras. They take the flag out, and like for me, I speak a lot about this like Triángulo Nother, which is the wordplay that to me is Triángulo not there. They're not anywhere. They're not here from there. They're in this wall with a flag in another country, etc. How is that? How will these people become very these diffuse? They are everywhere, but a lot of them, they just play with a sense of belonging in another place. And I think that the next one is the last image.
And I wanted to close with this image of a photographer from El Salvador, Fred Ramos, because I also wanted to show an image of a Central American photographer from the Northern Triangle. I had the opportunity to meet Fred 4 or 5 years ago. He came to Honduras to give a talk, and we were chatting for a while, and he has a very extensive work. He works in one of the best media places in El Salvador. In El Salvador. So what I want to highlight about this, that it was difficult to find photographs from Central American photographers because the press, Central American press, does not usually use their own base. They use photography from the US or European or Asian photographers. And so I wanted to highlight that because what images are we seeing? Who is giving this portrait? Someone from Canada, someone from Europe? So a little bit like that, it's difficult for us as photographers to access this type of photography, not because we're not interested, but because there's a lack of media. There's to be able to have all of the production, all of the equipment, it's difficult to get into that topic. And again, with this image, we have the wall, we have the fence, there's like a fence within a fence, we have the metal bars and the frustration of the migrants. What's there beyond that? What's waiting for us there? Why don't they let us pass? So this image is also a little bit like it basically closes the circle with the first one that we started with, that what are their dreams? What are the dreams of all of these immigrants? Yes, and also look at this child who represents the future, but is also looking back to the south. Yes, so, well, with these images, I finished the presentation. Any question or any comments? We're gonna see those now. Thank
Cantidad de fotógrafos mexicanos que están pudiendo también acceder a estas imágenes. Está el trabajo de Sashenka Gutiérrez, de Claudia Guadarrama, de Mónica González, de Jackie Munielo, ¿no? Y también un poco hablar como del fotoperiodismo desde una perspectiva de género. Creo que también sería como importante para futuras conversaciones, ¿no? De saber cómo se diferencia la mirada femenina de la migración y cuáles son las oportunidades, ¿no? que las mujeres fotógrafas como tú también están pudiendo generar en la frontera.
Sí, sí, totalmente. En este caso nos enfocamos bastante en lo que fue el fotoperiodismo y el fotoreportaje. Sí sé que como por ejemplo Griselda San Martín, la fotógrafa mexicana, y otros están trabajando también los temas desde otra forma fotográfica, ¿no? Tal vez ya más desde la fotografía contemporánea, pero no queríamos mezclar tanto porque esos ya son otros temas. Pero también ver cómo es esto, ¿no? También por qué se recurre también por ciertas personas a la fotografía contemporánea, y es por los riesgos que hay. No es una mentira, es un riesgo ir en esas caravanas, y si es un riesgo para un hombre, es un riesgo bien grande para una mujer. O para cualquier otra persona de la comunidad. Entonces, también, pero bueno, siempre hay herramientas como para comunicar.
Sí, sí, los nombres nada más que mencioné sí son mujeres fotoperiodistas trabajando para agencias. Pero sí, o sea, digo, también hay otro trabajo importantísimo dentro del arte contemporáneo que Adán, tú y yo habíamos como discutido antes. Nada más quería como hacer la distinción.
Yeah. Bueno, si no hay ningún comentario, creo que podríamos ir cerrando.
Yo creo que sí hay, ¿no? No sé si Juan nos quisieras apoyar leyendo un poco los comentarios y preguntas que hay del público.
Yo tengo un comentario, Claudia Sevilla, muchísimas gracias por compartirnos todas estas reflexiones, porque sabes, como tú que estás allá, Adán que está allá, tiene una perspectiva tan distinta de esta situación, y como bien lo mencionabas con el ejemplo de que hay muy pocos fotógrafos hondureños documentando y haciendo testimonio, hay muy pocas voces, entonces es bien difícil escuchar su postura, su sentir. Para mí ahorita toda la charla como que me movió totalmente emocionalmente, y entender como desde tu voz y la importancia de abrir más espacios para escuchar, pues desde la perspectiva desde Centroamérica, ¿no? Y bueno, primero agradecer, porque creo que hay muchas cosas que subrayaste, y yo quería un poco hablar de las caravanas pensándolas en algún momento cuando yo estaba escribiendo el proyecto de Intergalactix para hacer más investigación. Había estado leyendo artículos de migración y de las caravanas, y un artículo que ahorita me acabo de olvidar el nombre de la autora, pero era una reportera. Ella decía, estas no son caravanas, no hay que llamarlas caravanas, hay que llamarlas movimiento social, ¿no? Y que a mí me pareció, fue así como muy revelador, como claro, es un movimiento social organizado, hay una lucha por la vida, ¿no? Entonces también como otra vez dignificar al migrante, porque están haciendo un movimiento social, hay una lucha por la vida, hay una supervivencia, hay una lucha por mantener, incluso como la cuestión de mantener o sostener la vida, ¿sabes? Darle continuidad a la vida, traer niños, no es como, ay, es que traen a los niños y cómo pueden hacer eso. No, al contrario, están luchando por dar continuidad a la vida en este planeta. Y creo que eso es como bien, bien importante, y quiero conectarlo con un comentario que se hizo en el chat de Jessica Wood, que ella decía, cuando mostraron la fotografía, ella lo comparó con una marcha de Martin Luther King muy famosa, en el que están cruzando en un puente en Alabama, y me pareció maravilloso que Jessica, nuestro público, pudiera verlo desde esa perspectiva, ¿no? Porque normalmente es como dicen, todo este estereotipo alrededor de las imágenes del migrante, el racismo que nos rodea, no nos deja ver que es un movimiento social. Entonces me parece maravilloso que hiciera esa comparación, y pues bueno, eso es. Ahorita muchísimas cosas me hicieron pensar, pero muchas gracias a los tres.
Daniela, gracias por ese comentario. Creo que es algo que también ya habías mencionado anteriormente, y que gracias por volverlo a traer a la luz, porque es importante señalar también que es precisamente por haberse constituido con las características de un movimiento social, es que también ha habido una respuesta de parte del oficialismo acá, ¿no? Y del gobierno represor que tenemos a criminalizar y perseguir a los líderes de ese movimiento humano, precisamente porque adquiere unas características que no tenía en el pasado, porque era una migración mucho más atomizada, pero aquí hay una conciencia de acuerparse,
that was much more atomized, and now there's this sense of a community and massive care that we had not seen previously in these dimensions, because it's also ignored. I know that it's very impactful for a lot of people to see the images of these children as part of these caravans, but historically, immigration in our human existence has been families. To migrate is a right, and that family should be protected throughout its journey, and even more if there's the presence of the children. And what is done is exactly the opposite. Yes, I think, yes, it's so cool that we are able to have this meeting, because we can share these thoughts. Thank you so much to Jessica, and also the as part of the public who made that reference. Now we're thinking about images to put them side to side to do some type of comparison exercise. But I think that politically, thinking of it as a social movement is also like a blow to the government, because there's a phrase in Honduras that says, government for a better life. And so that's like the slogan of the government for a better life. A better life for who? Because obviously it's not like that. when all of this comes out in the media, and they're saying with the president, it's like it's a blow to the national governing party who's in power in this moment. The organization that they had was also great in the communication. They've also changed the people have also changed their organizing form. Thank you so much. Is there someone else in the public who would like to ask a question? We have a comment from Facebook, but I think that it's a spam comment. Oh, don't read it. But I'd like to add, I loved the Adán's observation, particularly about the flags, how many people bring the flag with them, and not just in the caravans, but also in marches in general. It's something that's very interesting to think about it in this context, to think in someone who is fleeing for because of different circumstances.